Okay, so this is only going to cover the first step of solving a system of equation, kind of the more challenging problems where you have to multiply one or both equations by a number. So I'm only going to go over the first step to find that zero. That's really the most important part. If you if you need to see the entire equation, please look at the previous video that I posted. It has these two equations or these two systems solved already. They're solved completely. You can see step by step. So this is what your answer looks like in the end. We are only going to cover the first step in the first new step in the systems of equation and finding those zeros. It's your job to figure out the rest. Okay, so we're looking for a zero here, all right? So we're gonna focus in on number 3. And we have our negative 3x plus 4y equals 12, and then 2x plus y equals negative 8. So negative 3 and 2 don't add together to be 0. And 4 and y do not add together to be 0. So you've got to see, like, which one do you see as a 0? Do you see multiplying, do you see the opposite of 4 down here as a negative 4 and then multiplying your second equation by negative 4? Or do you see a negative 6 and a positive 6 here by multiplying the second equation by 3 and the first one by 2? It's up to you. Which do you want to get rid of? I'm going to get rid of the second one. I'm going to get rid of the y here because I'm only going to have to multiply the second equation by something. If I got rid of the x, I would have to multiply both equations. So I'm going to start off with the 4y. I'm going to bring that over here. And what's the opposite of 4y? What's our goal down here? Well, the opposite of 4y is negative 4y. Okay? Okay, well, what do you have to multiply y by to get negative 4y? Well, the answer, of course, is negative 4. So we've got that tells us what we're going to multiply the entire equation by, which is negative 4. So negative 4 times 2 is negative 8y, or negative 8x. Okay, negative 8x. Okay, and then we've got negative 4 times y is negative 4y. So we did that right already. That's already done for us. And then negative 8 times negative 4 is positive 32. Okay. Well, the first one, we don't have to do anything to the equation because 4y and 4y are the same. So you just bring everything else over. So negative 3x plus 4y equals 12. Okay, so there's our 0. Okay. All right, let's practice getting that 0 again. So it's up to you. What do you want to pick? You want to 0 with the x or you want to 0 with the y? I am going to pick the y because I see that one of mine is already negative. Okay, so 3 and 2, they're not multiples of each other, so you can't just multiply one of them. You're going to have to multiply both. So what's a number that both 3 and 2 go into? So I see 3 and 2. And the easiest way to figure out what number goes into 3 and 2 is multiply them together, and you get 6. So I'm going to stick with a positive 6y for the top equation, and then I'm going to stick with a negative 6y for the second equation, okay? And we're going to fill in the rest here. So I know I want this. I know I want 6 and negative 6. So what times 3 equals positive 6? Well, 2. So that tells me I've got to multiply the entire equation by 2. 2 times 2 is 4x, and we're going to make that positive. So we have an actual equation here. And then the second part, negative 2, or negative 1 times 2 is negative 2. Okay, our second equation, what do I multiply negative 2 by to get negative 6? Well, the answer is, of course, 3. So that tells us we're going to multiply this entire equation by 3. So 3 times 5 is 15x, and then negative 12 times 3 equals negative 36. It is early in the morning for me, so brain's working a little slow. Okay, so there's our 0 right there. When we can add the equations together, we get 19x, and we get negative 38. Okay, and you could solve the rest of it and substitute back in. I don't want to do the rest of the problems right now. I want to focus in on getting you guys to see where I'm coming up with this 0. That's the important part here. Okay, yes, you do have to solve the entire problem. This is not solving the entire problem. It's only the first kind of big step to get you the 0. Okay. our last two zeros here. So I have 4 and 3, and I got 2 and 3. So what do you want to get rid of? Do you want to get rid of the S, or do you want to get rid of the A? It's up to you. I'm going to get rid of the S. I'm going to go with the S. And the reason I'm going to go with the S is that I'm going to end up with smaller numbers. You can already see that 64 and 60 are large numbers. They're relatively large numbers to what we've been working with in the past. So the smaller I can keep everything, the better off I'm going to be. Okay, so of course I'm looking for a 0 here. Well, 2 and 3 both go into 6. So that's going to be 6S. And then 3 goes into 6S. Do not like S as a variable. It always ends up looking like a 5. So I've got 6S, but one of them's got to be negative. I'm going to make the second one negative. Okay. Okay, so what do I have to multiply 3 by to get to negative 6? Well, the answer is negative 2. So that tells me I've got to multiply the entire equation by negative 2. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6a. And then I've got negative 2 times 60 is negative 120. Okay, and the next one, I'm looking at 2 to 6, so I've got to multiply by 3. Everything's got to get multiplied by 3. Okay, oops. And we've got 3 times 4 is 12a. And then 3 times 2 is 6s. And then 64 times 3. Let me make sure I'm getting my math right over here. 192. I am on camera, so I don't want to make that mistake. Okay, well, I've got my 0 here. There's my 0. Now I can solve the rest of the problem. Okay, this particular problem, you could have approached it a different way. You notice that you could have divided everything by 2 on the first one. If you're that person that saw, hey, well, what happens if I divide everything by 2? You could do that. And then what happens if I divide everything by negative 3? You could do that as well. So it doesn't really matter which way you approach it, but for our purposes and people kind of getting used to this, I didn't want to do the division on it. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea of, you know, getting that first step and looking for your 0. Again, these 3 problems are not finished. You have to finish them out, find the A in this one, and then substitute it back in. Find the X in this one, substitute it back in. Find the X in this one, substitute it back in. They should end up looking like what we did over here. Your math should look like this, okay? Find the first variable, substitute it back in, and solve, and then come up with your ordered pair. Just to reiterate, these problems are not finished. I was only showing you how do you find your 0, okay? What to look for in your 0. So hopefully that helps. Ask me questions in the comments if you want me to post another video on solving the rest of these. So